Our patience up on the upper slopes of the sand dune paid dividends, because very soon we were filming a number of very tired elephants as they wearily ploughed their way up through the loose Kalahari sand on their way towards the crest of the sand dune high above. One young bull wandered past us at very close range and disappeared into one of the demolished thickets behind us. The vegetation he walked into was a shroud of thin vertical white stalks, because every stem from the ground up had long ago been chewed clean of its bark. The stripped stalks, therefore, had no outer bark and no cambium, so they were totally devoid of any kind of elephant food. Nevertheless, in desperation, the young bull immediately started chewing on the dry sticks in the hope of getting something out of the empty larder. A closer look showed us that the young animal was eating the odd green leaf that was attempting to see the light of day. I had filmed elephants at Chobe in October 1995, and on that occasion I recruited the help of a tourist helicopter pilot to find out where the breeding herds went to in search of forage every day. They had regularly left the floodplain in the late afternoon, and after laboriously climbing to the top of the big sand dune, they had simply disappeared into the teak forest high above. I was curious to know in 1995 how far they had trekked, because even in those days, nearly 30 years ago, the Chobe teak forest was devoid of any kind of understory. So I wondered just what the elephants were eating, and I wondered how far they had to travel to find the food they needed to survive. The chopper pilot, at my request, searched for and found several small breeding herds some 25 kilometers distant from the river, very early the next morning, and he periodically kept tabs on them during the day as they made their way slowly back to the river. On this occasion they were all back on the floodplain by mid-afternoon. So at that time in Botswana's history, the breeding elephant herds of Chobe, at the height of the dry season, were seemingly traveling 25 kilometers every day from the Chobe River to the distant location of their food supply, and 25 kilometers back to the water again on the same day. This was a treadmill occupation that took its toll on the elephants. The long walk used up all their energy. To cut a very long story short, lactating mothers were so badly fed that they stopped producing milk, and their starving babies were, of necessity, abandoned. During that same period, 30 years ago, the Chobe National Park experienced a glut of baby elephant deaths during every dry season. On every occasion, lions or hyenas were found in possession of elephant calf carcasses, and a tourist myth developed that claimed these predators were purposefully preying on baby elephants. Indeed, those tour operators who disapproved of lethal elephant population reduction management, like culling and hunting, spread the propaganda lie that Botswana did not need to cull elephants because the country's lions and hyenas were doing the culling job for the government. And many tourist operators fabricated all sorts of extravagant stories of this kind. Looking for circling vultures in the sky, which is the common trick that us humans use to locate dead animals on the ground, has for many years been the way that tourist guides in Botswana have found lions to show their visiting clients. Most baby elephants have a lion or two or more feeding on the carcass, and the tourism fraternity, with no elephant management experience whatsoever, but who have a vivid imagination, continue to insist that the lions sneak into the breeding elephant herds and take out the baby calves of a size that they know they can handle. For me, that is a preposterous supposition. After more than 60 years of hands-on experience running Africa's national parks and managing their elephant herds, I can tell you with absolute confidence that even a big pride of lions would not venture anywhere near a robust and healthy elephant breeding herd and try to take out of it one of the smaller calves. One good smack of a healthy and mature cow elephant's trunk would smash a mature lion's back, and I've seen many prides of lions being scattered and chased away by cow elephants when they ventured too close to their family herd. When a whole elephant population is suffering from general lack of nutrition malaise, however, all sorts of things can happen. For example, even quite large subadult elephants that are suffering from low nutrition sickness, especially when they are wandering around on their own, weak and confused, can easily fall prey to a pride of lions, and they sometimes do. But when elephants are well nourished and living in a normal elephant society and in a healthy habitat, it would be extremely foolish for any lion or any number of lions to attack them. This brings us to the stage where I need to offer you an explanation with regards to why so many baby elephants died in Botswana during the dry seasons of the 1980s and 90s, and during the first 20 years of the new millennium. It took me some time to reach this conclusion, and it was reached only because of my very similar experiences in Zimbabwe's Wankie National Park, of which I had been the provincial game warden in charge in the early 1980s. In 1982, in Zimbabwe's Wankie National Park, I was touring the water holes looking for the carcasses of dead baby elephants. And I came across one baby elephant wandering around on its own at a place called Nehimba. Not far away was a lone elephant cow, and I realized she was trying to entice her calf to follow her back into the field. But the little calf was absolutely skin and bone. It had no strength whatsoever to do anything other than just walk around in the hot sun. And its mother was trying desperately to get it to follow, but the little guy just had no strength. Its mother had given up producing milk because of lack of food, and as a consequence he had no strength. He had not had a drink from his mother for days. And she eventually turned around and left him there at the pan, and she wandered off back into the bush to join her herd. And the little guy was left standing alone amongst the carcasses of a few other young elephants that had died recently in the hot sun. And I took pity on it, and I walked up to it and put a bullet into its brain and put it out of its misery. And that was the story that was happening all over Wankie National Park that year. I picked up dead baby elephants that were in extremis, that were actually dying on their feet because their mothers had stopped producing milk, because there just wasn't enough food to feed them, and they couldn't make enough milk to feed their babies. It was a tragic state of affairs, but it was happening all over the national park. I had one brief period during this episode to photograph the elephant cow and her calf. It's the one and only time I had really been right in the mix with this actually happening right in front of my eyes. During the dry season of 2021, I recognized this self-same syndrome in the breeding elephant herds that frequented the Chobe floodplain that year. The big cows were seemingly not yet dying of starvation, but because they were suffering from insufficient nutrition, many of them had stopped lactating. The paucity of calves under 3 years of age, however, was all too obvious. For the duration of the 6 months long dry season every year, since the start of the new millennium, I surmised that the Chobe elephants had been forced to walk many tens of kilometers every day between their water supply, the Chobe River, and wherever it was they had found enough food to stay alive, and that they had walked that same distance back to the river again during the same 24-hour period. So they had a survival commitment to walk a round-robin distance of 50 kilometers, or 20 miles, every day. And it is my belief that the amount of energy they expended walking that distance was greater than the energy they gained from the poor quality food they had found to eat. The net energy factor, therefore, was negative. It is little wonder that the cows regularly stopped lactating. It is understandable, too, that the smaller baby elephants had had trouble keeping up with their mothers on their imperatively long daily treks. And one doesn't have to wonder too much why morbidly starving baby elephants were abandoned by their mothers. If the mothers had not left their starving babies behind and gone off to find food for themselves with the herd, it would have been the mothers that died as well as the babies. Reasonable people, therefore, will find it easy to understand how and why lions and hyenas found so many abandoned baby elephants to prey upon. The predators had no need to sneak into the dangerous heart of an elephant breeding herd to snatch a 1 or 2-year-old calf from under the trunks of their defensive mothers. At the height of every dry season, countless baby elephants were simply abandoned by their mothers and virtually handed on a dinner plate to the scavenging predators. Whilst we are on this subject, let me kill another bird with the same stone. During the early months of 2020, between 300 and 400 adult elephants were found dead in Botswana's wilderness. Only elephants were affected, no other species, and they had died one by one and moderately far apart. Human involvement was ruled out. By that I mean they were not killed by poachers, because the elephant's tusks had not been removed. They were not killed with a rifle bullet. There were no bullet wounds. They were also not killed with the poison, because no other species of animal was affected, and the death stopped when the natural pans in the affected area dried up. And similar elephant deaths did not happen in 2021 or 2022. After veterinary experts and chemists had examined the data, the Botswana government concluded that the deaths were caused by cyanobacterial neurotoxins derived from blue-green algae. Blue-green algae, the authorities tell us, blooms in standing water, which is why the death stopped, they claim, when the ephemeral rainwater pans dried up in June of 2020. The origin of this blue-green algae, the same authorities suggest, was the Okavango Delta. This is most unlikely, because the Okavango swamps are renowned for their crystal clear fresh water. It is true that blue-green algae blooms in standing water, yes, but only when that water is contaminated with extra rich organic nutrients, such as city sewage waste. Lake Makelwane outside Harare in Zimbabwe, for example, receives all the sewage waste from Harare city. Lake Makelwane, therefore, is full of blue-green algae. The Hartbeespoort Dam north of Johannesburg and Pretoria in South Africa is likewise full of sewage effluent from the entire Gauteng metropolis. It too is full of blue-green algae. Farm dams in the vicinity of both these two lakes, however, are filled with crystal clear rainwater, and they have no blue-green algae. And I have never seen blue-green algae occurring, let alone blooming, in any of the thousands of ephemeral rainwater pans that have been a part of my 60-odd-year adult life in the wilds of southern Africa. In my considered opinion, therefore, it is highly unlikely that the seasonal rainwater pans in Botswana, which have no direct connection to the Okavango swamps, and which are not contaminated with nutrient-rich inflows, had anything to do with these elephant deaths. Another report supports the point of view to which, when these 300 to 400 elephants were dying in Botswana, 17 others were found dead of unknown causes near Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. And Victoria Falls is 400 kilometers away to the east of the Okavango swamps. So where did those Zimbabwe elephants get their supposed lethal dose of cyanobacterial neurotoxins? I would like to suggest another route to explore, undernourishment. I am not a veterinarian, nor am I a medical or nutritional expert, but I think in this documentary that we have provided enough evidence to support our contention that Botswana's elephants have spent the last 60-odd years gradually stripping their habitats of all edible plant life. that they have modified their original habitats beyond recognition, and that they have caused severe stress on their sanctuaries' biological diversities, and that they have already caused the local extinction of a great many important plant and animal species and put pressure on many others. And I claim that currently Botswana's elephants are, at the height of every dry season, very undernourished. This does not mean they are malnourished, which happens when they eat bad food. It means they're not getting enough food to fuel their body's essential functions. Undernourishment induces morbidity in animals as well as in humans. In both, it causes a general state of malaise, physical weakness, reduced mental capacity, and it attracts disease of many kinds. Medical experts claim that undernourishment and mortality are very closely linked. I believe, therefore, that undernourishment was most likely the cause of the 300 to 400 odd elephant deaths in Botswana in 2020. We can take this argument yet one stage further. Over the years, we have had different people offer the same assertion that they know that lions in Botswana are hunting and killing adult elephants. That means, of course, that these people claim proof of that fact. I doubt it. Indeed, quite frankly, I do not believe these stories. I have personally seen multiple interactions between lions and elephants over the last 60-odd years, and I am confident that a healthy herd of adult elephants, bulls and or cows are a match for any lion, or any pride of lions, and healthy adult elephants work in concert with each other to ward off attacks by man or lion. To explain where this idea comes from, that lions in Botswana predate on mature elephants, I have to point out that even very large elephants on their own, when they are in absolute extremis, due to them being desperately weakened, for example, by a never-ending shortage of food, don't comprehend the danger of being in very close proximity to a pride of lions. In human terms, they just don't seem to care. They seemingly have lost the will to live. Mature elephants in such a careless predicament, therefore, might well succumb to an attack by lions. For such an attack to be successful, however, the elephant victim will still have to be in a very weakened state, which is very possible in the Botswana of today. There is also the possibility, of course, that elephants which the lions have ostensibly killed were already dying of natural causes. By that I mean undernourishment, or they were already dead when the lions found them. They were probably, therefore, at best staggering about in a very weakened condition. I have to also point out that Botswana lost 300 to 400 adult elephants in 2020 that died, probably from undernourishment, without any lions being involved in their deaths at all. A lion found feeding off a dead elephant of any size, therefore, is not proof that the lions actually hunted and killed that elephant. Such lion kills cannot be described as representing predation. At best, it is scavenging. Nevertheless, it is undernourishment that sets the scene for all these kinds of incident, and undernourishment only becomes an ecological factor when and where an elephant population's numbers grossly exceed its habitat's elephant carrying capacity. Furthermore, the longer the excessive population problem exists, the greater become the tragedies attached to undernourishment. The one problem rolls into the next one, until the ecosystem can stand no more, and it collapses into an irreparable heap. I here wish to comment that movement towards that state of affairs is already in fast-forward motion in Botswana. When I first saw these two film clips, my immediate question was, where do all these elephants get 200 to 300 kilograms of food to eat every day? And not for just one day, for every day throughout the long 6 months dry season every year. Seeing visions of so many elephants together like this is something that you will not see anywhere else in the world today, only in Botswana. This is not a good omen. Indeed, it is a very bad one. It can be likened to the straw that breaks the camel's back because it confirms the presence of an excessive elephant population. And that in turn tells us that for decades past, nobody in Botswana has cared too much about the country's wildlife management responsibilities. Nevertheless, being able to present this kind of grand tourism spectacle to their international tourist guests has been the fervent dream of Botswana's several ill-informed and self-centered tourism moguls, all animal rightist in orientation, for many decades past. Come people, let's assess this kind of spectacle with understanding and responsibility. After a week at Kasane, we left the Chobe and drove 150 kilometers south to Savuti. The roads were just troughs of soft Kalahari sand. It had been 30 years since I had last visited Savuti, and the total lack of camel thorn trees on this occasion, except inside the fenced camping ground, came as a shock to my system. We saw no elephants and no other game either en route. Nevertheless, there was elephant spoor everywhere. In retrospect, we should not have been surprised when we saw no elephants, because we had travelled during the midday hours and it was as hot as hell. During each and every day, 2 to 4 hippo bulls graced us with their presence in a big river pool located right in front of our tents. They disappeared at night when they left the river to graze on dry land.
We are the children.